just check what I've got, oh shit, over here. Electric dirt bike. So it will be for next video, we'll try to check which one is faster. Electric dirt bike or maybe something big like Laotie. Check the suspension in this thing. From rear one, front one, shit, it's working good, isn't it? And also it has chain on the back. So yeah, if you are not subscriber, then I recommend to do it because lots of funny stuff is coming. But now let's back to T8030 and let's check what we have to fix. Of course, I see now that we have to replace the stock charging connectors because these microphone ports are dangerous to use. There is nothing between the pins which can prevent from short circuit. As you can see on the pictures, many users had this issue, so they had some short circuit on those connectors. And bear in mind, inside we've got huge battery. In Ti30 we've got 60 volts, 38 amps. This is huge amount of power. If this thing will go boom, then quite easily windows in your flat can just pop out, like true story. So the first thing, I recommend to change those stock microphone ports to something better. I've got my idea with XT30 connectors. I cannot reset now for free for my Patreons. So if you would like them, then just PM me. I spent too much time to make them perfect, and I know that if I release the files, then lots of people will start to sell it. But you can find on Thingiverse copy of my idea, and you can just print it for free. Now let's check how it looks inside. We've got 8 screws around the deck, and when you will try for the first time to remove this top part of the deck, take your time because there is rubber between the deck and this frame. So it will be quite hard to remove it, so take your time, be gentle, and sooner or later you will do it. And we are inside. So my first impression is that it looks really not bad. The cables are quite tight, so there is still mess, but it doesn't look that bad like in other Chinese scooters. Yeah, it's really not bad. As you can see, this battery is quite small. It's unbelievable that this one got really around 37 amps, maybe even 38 like over here. So I have no idea how they did it, but yeah, it could be still something fishy. I have to test it because this battery is too small. Here we got the screws and the battery. I will not add my printed spacers. I will just add some sponge to prevent from battery hitting those screws. And also over here I will add some sponge, or maybe it's not needed because as you can see, Chinese already added some, so nice. Cables, I will not move it because it looks not bad. Thermal pad, this one is, holy shit, a little bit too thin because thermal pads should split the heat around the frame, actually on the top and bottom part, but this one is a little bit too thin and it doesn't touch the top part of the frame. And also Chinese decided to just use thermal pad around it. Why over here? Well, okay, so thermal pads are on the top and the bottom to split the heat. Here we got some alarm, which is, I need to fix it. So to be honest, inside the deck we don't have much to just change those stock charging ports, and actually this is it because controllers are well secured. In next episode, if this scooter will be worth it, so if this battery will be really around 36 amps after my test, then we'll change these charging ports. I will show you how to change those big connectors which connecting controllers to the motors, because they are big, heavy and stupid. Why stupid? Because they are melting on those points, because the power of these 45 controllers is too big and those connections are too bad, like too small. And we will use some bullet connectors, which you can see now on the screen, which are much smaller and way lighter. Rear suspension, always when you have scooter with that kind of swing arm without any bearings, as you can see over here, you have to remove those bolts and add lots of grease, because without any grease there is lots of friction, especially on this spot. So here you can see the spacer and here is the shock, which are quite tight, and here is lots of friction. If you will not add any grease, then it will be huge loose after a couple weeks. I noticed that lots of users don't care about this, and then actually over here where is the hole for the bolt, this one, now is just round, this hole, but after a couple of weeks it will be like ellipse and you will feel huge loose on this spot. So yeah, always add lots of grease around it. It's super easy to fix it, just remove the screws, add some grease and place it back. As you can see, no grease, which is quite bad. Here we got rear shock. Now let's remove the spring. So I will use this hexagonal key and just rotate it, and we can remove the spring. Why I doing it? Because I want to lubricate inside this shock, which will of course increase lifespan of this shock, and rear suspension will be even softer. It works just better. So now we have to lubricate this part over here. I recommend grease for bearings. It's super sticky. Yummy. Now a little bit of grease over here, around, and just do it like this. I can feel already that the friction is much lower, so for sure now this shock will work much longer. And now I recommend to use some kind of clean film or sandwich film to cover the shock, because we added lots of grease inside, so some kind of particles can easily stick to this grease and damage the shock inside. So simple clean film will seriously extend the lifespan of the fork. I'm sure that now someone is thinking, let's use shrink tube. Well, actually it's a bad idea, because shrink tube is quite rigid and it will break sooner or later, and this thing is super flexible, so it will stay for at least one season. I tested, and on my other scooters it's still working after one season, so I recommend cheap sandwich clean film. This is the best way to go and the cheapest. I recommend to print that kind of washers and use it between this spacer and the shock. It will seriously decrease friction. Of course, add lots of grease over here, just everywhere. So I greased whole big bottom bolt, this one. I add washers over here, so at that point, and also on the left side. It's quite important to add it over here, because here we got rotating point. So thanks to it, you will decrease the friction. And yeah, use simple washers, these ones. Yes, Foxy? Yep. Next day, so I finished rear suspension. It looks almost the same, almost, because as you can see, I covered the shock by using simple sandwich clean film. I added extra washers between the spacers and the shock to decrease the friction. Grease is just everywhere. Over here you can see also some washers to decrease the friction, so over here and on the other side. I added some extra cowfer around the deck to make it a little bit more water splash proof. I know that someone will say, why don't you use simple silicone? Because as you can see, if you use thin layer on this deck and just make it dry over the night, it will look awesome. So that's why I'm using cowfer. Here I will use simple sponge from the package to secure battery even better, and now we can close the deck. And of course from the bottom I always removing those spacers, yellow spacers, so the screws with the rubber. Because as you know, I like to do some crazy off-road stuff, like sliding over some fallen trees, so I have to have this deck flat. That's why I always removing this. And as you can see, there we go the hole, so I'm using simple hot glue. Now let's seal the hole just a little bit. Hot. Shit. And of course at the end, check all screws around the scooter. This is quite important. It doesn't matter if you are buying Dualtron, Laotie or other scooter, always check all screws.